Good morning to all of you and welcome. Welcome to ICEC first panel titled Advocacy Group, Forming Advocacy Group to Encourage and Promote Cultural Heritage. I have the great honor of introducing three-star speakers for this panel. Dr. Zohre Mowahed, Senior Manager at WSSC and a former parent of former students at ICEC and also former president of Anjuman. Dr. Neda Freha, one of the earlier students at ICEC. She's a physician right now and she practices internal medicine at University of Maryland and has a teaching position also. And finally, Mrs. Tami Darwish, Vice President of Dark Horse, a well-known businesswoman and also one of the Iranian women very active in community. With your permission, I would like to start our panel. Each panelist will speak about 8 minutes to 10 minutes, and then at the end we have 15 minutes for questions and answers. Dr. Mowahed.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm very glad and actually I'm honored to be here to represent Iran Cultural and Educational Center at this special junction in time. I really believe that we are finishing one chapter and moving on to the next chapter of expanding the scope of our school, and for very good causes. So the brief presentation that I have put together starts with a quick definition of what advocacy means. And essentially, it's fighting for a cause that you believe in. And we are going to talk about, for me, I want to talk about how do we convince parents that this is the right thing to do to keep the heritage alive. And then Nedajun is going to talk about how to continue this for older kids that go to college. And we're grateful that Tam is here. She's going to be talking about how we will expand this to the community at large. So in terms of being able to advocate for a cause, of course, the entire purpose of this effort is to convince, to make a change in terms of regulations, budgets, programs that would allow you to fulfill a belief that you have. And in order to be able to do that, you need to have several components put together. The first step is that you need to know the facts and be able to convince the audience, in this case, in my talk, the parents, that this is the right thing to do, to teach your children. And then it's important to have a clear message. And what we are advocating here is that keeping the heritage has a win-win-win approach. The first winner is the child for being able to be exposed to their cultural heritage. The second win is the host country, and we're going to hear about that and how much they will be able to win from having this additional culture added to their country. And of course, the third winner is the mother country and how the important stuff is going to be kept alive as we move on. So it was very interesting when Dr. Wiley was speaking this morning, and he did say that the mainstream culture has a lot of resentment. And the whole concern is that there's this national debate that if there are people coming from different cultures and different backgrounds, they're going to, in a way, dilute the mother country, the host country, and threaten the identity of the host country. And unfortunately, in many settings, when a person speaks a different language, they are looked down upon and they are considered as inferior in a sense. And for a long time, and we are seeing slowly the shifts and changes, but for a long time, it was very strongly said that, okay, you come to the school, you leave your culture and your language at the door. You're not bringing that in. That was the message that either implicit or explicitly was communicated to the children. And what was not realized is that with doing that, you're actually holding a piece of that child behind. You are not allowing that whole identity of the person to come into the school free for who they are and be proud of who they are. And there is extensive research that we've heard some of it this morning about the positive effect of learning the mother language as a child. And this enforces the sense of identity, and it has demonstrated over and over again that it gives a sense of flexibility to the brain of the child when they are learning their own language and when they're coming to the school to learn the additional things that they need. And the intellectual and the conceptual development of the child significantly expands when they have the opportunity to grow in the bilingual setting that they are set up to grow up in. So in order to be able to ensure that the identity of the child is preserved, we have to remember that when we are rupturing their cultural identity, we're rupturing their relationship and the path that they could have had with their grandparents and with the whole heritage that they came from. So we do not want to do that. And the identity of the communities is actually built with the identity of the different components that are brought in by the bilingual children. There's a lot of research that is showing the people who have different languages have the ability to advance more professionally because the added language and the added heritage is going to give them an edge. And I am encouraged again by what we heard this morning about the opportunities and the additional doors that will be opened to the students as they expand their abilities. And a lot of parents do become concerned about if we start talking different languages in the home, it's going to confuse the children and it's not going to be a healthy environment. And over and over and over again, the research has shown that that is not true. What is important for a parent is to give the love that the child needs. And they have to know how to raise a healthy child in their home. But they can speak to them in 1, 2, 3, 4 different languages. There is nothing wrong with starting a sentence in one language and finishing in another. It's the content of what you're communicating. And the children are so much more smarter to be able to read within those different languages. By being able to give them a language, you have given them an extra tool. And for example, I heard from Ms. Nancy Rhodes this morning about math and how Dr. Arbabi had been teaching the concepts of addition and subtraction in classes. And I read another research that was talking about telling time. And it said that how able the students that had learned how to tell time in, for example, Farsi or another language, how able they were to catch it up in English. So it does give them an edge, and understanding concepts in another language does enable them. I actually ran into a very, very fascinating research that talked about autistic children. There was a University of California study in 2005 that had done a study for autistic children who do have some challenges in learning. And they did compare helping these students with learning bilinguals, and it said to be or not to be bilingual for autistic children. That was the title of the research. And at the end of the study, they documented it and clearly came up with the fact that even for the autistic children, they will greatly benefit from having that second language spoken to them. It does expand their ability to emotionally express themselves and to be able to communicate even with their limited capabilities. So there is no question about that, and we've heard a lot on that. So in addition to all of this value, and this is what I was just talking about, the win for the child, and we continue with that even if we didn't know all of these things that we just talked about, do we want to raise our children with no connection to the roots? Do we want them to have no sense of their host, or to be fully immersed in the host country without any knowledge of what their mother country had to offer? And we are very fortunate. Dr. Hadcock talked about a lot of our heritage and the long history that we've had. We have delicate arts and poetry, and we have so much to offer in terms of the music, in terms of our traditions. And I just want to take a moment to recognize our celebration of New Year. I am so proud of it, and I can never stop talking about it wherever I go anywhere, because I think it is scientifically based. And it does go back to the rotation of Earth around the sun. And this is something that is going to stay, and I don't want it to die forever. I want our children and grandchildren to be able to recognize that this is a celebration of earth. And people talk about how the trees are decorated in Christmas. And I say, the earth decorates the trees for us at New Year, at Persian New Year, with all the flowers that bloom. And you know, it's just the amazing thing that I don't ever want it to die. So we have such a rich culture and such a rich heritage with so many colors. And then we are fortunate, again, it was mentioned this morning, I think this is a luxury that all of us are collectively benefiting from, the fact that our heritage has all these educated Iranian Americans with the most highly educated minority in this country. So for me, it's a question of, how do we want to keep all of these beautiful colors of the rainbow? And do we want to keep that away from our children? Why do we want to deprive them of everything that is available to be offered to them? So I just want to say that, you know, in the past 25 years, ICEC has done an exemplary job with our children. We conducted a survey of about 100 of our students, and we learned so much about them in terms of their leadership roles, in terms of the languages that they speak, and we're hearing from them, you know, just in the other rooms in this hotel. It's an amazing accomplishment that our children have done, and we're going to continue to build on that. So what ICEC has done and what's going to continue is that same concept that we're going to empower our young learners, and we are on the strong belief and the foundation that this is a win for our children because it gives them the sense of identity. And when we're talking about the brief message or the simple message, the win-win-win is for the children. The host country is going to become a better world, more peaceful, more globalized, that benefits from all these beautiful additions that are added to the country. And of course, the mother country benefits from being able to continue its identity. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Good morning. It's such an honor to be here. The whole reason I'm here is Dr. Arababi, and like so many people in this room, I owe her just an enormous debt of gratitude for so many things in life. She was my Persian teacher from when I was 3 or 4 years old until I went to college. And so she's been an incredible mentor in my life, both through, obviously, most importantly, the Persian education, but also just giving me and my parents guidance along the way in terms of which high school program I should go to, which colleges I should consider. I mean, she's just been an amazing influence, so I'm very grateful to her for inviting me to be here today with all of you. She had asked me to speak in this panel about an experience that I had in college at Emory University in Atlanta, where I sort of inadvertently, I want to be very honest, I can't claim more credit than I deserve. I very inadvertently became part of a group of people that began a Persian studies curriculum at Emory, so she wanted me to speak about that experience. It started very kind of haphazardly almost. I became friends with a group of Iranian American students in my class, actually through Organic Chemistry Lab. That was how it started. And I was amazed. I wasn't necessarily seeking out those friendships, but it was amazing how much comfort I found meeting other people my own age who spoke Persian, who knew the food, who knew the culture, who knew the humor. And when you're in a place, you know, potentially, you know, I had grown up in Maryland my whole life, so being in Atlanta was a new experience. Just being far from home was a new experience. And so to have that familiarity was really more comforting than I would have imagined. So we formed a sort of Persian club, and really the whole goal of it was just to go out to dinner to Chilo Kebab and, you know, maybe go to some Persian concerts that would come to Atlanta. I mean, it was meant to be a social gathering. But in the end, what also kind of ended up happening at the same time was my college roommate, who's not Iranian, she's actually, her mom is Jewish and her dad is Cuban, so go figure. Her stepdad was the chair of the Middle Eastern Studies Department at Emory. And so it was just a very fortuitous coincidence. Of course, given that her stepdad and her mother lived in Atlanta, they would have us over for dinner all the time. It's one of those nice comforts of home in a place, for me, far from home. And so he was interested in my Iranian background. He wanted to know all about the ICEC and the experiences that I had had in Persian school growing up. And he then told me that they were actually looking to hire a professor of Persian studies, and it would be the first one that Emory had had. They had extensive curricula in other Middle Eastern languages and cultures, but not yet anything in Persian studies. And so he wanted to pick my brain about kind of what should be included in a curriculum, what would be helpful from a student's perspective. And so then, you know, again, sort of the way that life works out, very often you don't appreciate the significance of something in your life until it's over. And in some ways, you know, and I was just telling, as a quick side note, I was telling someone this morning that when I was 7 years old going to Persian school on Saturday mornings, of course I was like, do I have to go? Do I really have to go? And my parents were like, yes, you have to go. And I am so glad that I did. I'm so glad they did. So in a similar sort of way, where these things happen and you appreciate their significance later, this chair of the Middle Eastern Studies department, my friend's stepfather, asked me to be a part of the search committee for the professor of Persian studies. And so I got to go and have dinners at nice restaurants with the whole Middle Eastern Studies department. I was the one student on the group, and it was a ton of fun. I really loved it. I got to meet 3 different faculty members from all over the country who wanted to come and build the curriculum and the division at Emory. And then we helped select one candidate, and then we helped launch the first of the Persian courses. So I got to take that my senior year, and it started off fairly casually. It was part language, part culture. We read and discussed the works of Sa'di and Hafiz and Ferdowsi, and I remembered that from my ICEC experiences. And so it was wonderful to hear familiar poetry that I remember Dr. Arbabi teaching me 10, 15 years beforehand. So now, you know, I graduated college in 1998, so it's been a while, and now the curriculum in the department is much bigger and more extensive. They have a new professor on board now whom I haven't met. I never had a chance to meet him. But they offer many more classes. They have Persian 101 all the way through, I think, 3.0 something, but then in addition they have all of these other opportunities for individual study in language and culture and history. So it's an existing robust program, nothing at all like the Roshan Institute here, but hopefully on its way at some point. And so that was what Khanam Arabi had wanted me to speak about. I was able to continue this a little bit when I went to medical school, and we formed a Persian club for those of us in medical school who were Iranian American, and again that was based more on going out for food, but it was still fun and very a nice way to connect with other students from the same part of the world, the same country. When we were planning this panel discussion ahead of time, one wonderful piece of advice that you gave me was to give concrete tips for any of the young people in the room who may think about doing similar things. And I think one theme that's already been brought up, which is so important, is that of networking and forming connections. If I hadn't become friends with those kids in my organic chemistry class, if I hadn't talked about my experiences as a student at the ICEC with my friend's stepdad, you know, all of those connections really matter, and that sort of helps get the wheels turning. I think identifying a fact when you're in the college or even graduate school level, identifying a faculty mentor or advocate is important. They can help you navigate some of the logistics, some of the bureaucracy in a way that as a student you may just not know how to do. So we had that at Emory, and that was helpful. And if you see a gap in the curriculum, and we heard the story this morning about the student who wrote a letter at the University of Maryland College Park saying, you know, can we have one course in Iranian history? And that's how the whole thing got started. So if you see a gap in the curriculum, come up with creative ways to fill it and go forth with your ideas. And then have a plan to keep the momentum going. So have an event, plan an event every couple of months at minimum, just to sort of keep the momentum, to keep excitement, and not have it just be that you sort of start off really strong, but then things peter out. The last thing that I'll say, not related at all about the higher education piece, but how inspired I am to be here. I have a 15-month-old son, and listening to Dr. Movahed and listening to all the stories today, you know, my husband is Lebanese American, so my maiden name was Homoyunpur. And so he speaks Arabic and French, and I speak Farsi and English. And our parents, both of our parents, are very involved in helping to raise him. So while we both work, it's mostly my mom, and then also my mother-in-law who help watch him. And it's very inspiring. You know, I'm going to go home and I'm going to speak with him more in Persian now. And it's always been a mix. And one last anecdote, my mom always does all the all that stuff. So my husband now says all of those things. So when my husband, who's not, doesn't speak any Persian, is feeding my son, he's like, he doesn't even know what he's saying, but those words have become part of. So it's nice. It's a nice excuse to have the Persian language kind of reintroduced into the home environment. So that was my thoughts.
Thank you so much.
So good morning. My name is Tammy Darvish, and I'm from Dark Cars Automotive Group. We're a privately owned chain of automobile retail stores throughout Greater Washington. We have 31 locations, and our company was founded by my father, who was first immigrated here for medical school back in the late 50s. Ended up selling used cars to make money. So imagine calling back home saying I'm leaving medical school, dad, to be a used car salesman because I'm making a lot of money, because from what I do know is it's all about being a lawyer, an engineer, or a doctor. So as a car salesman, we hit as rock bottom as you could possibly get in a culture. But we're really proud of what we were able to accomplish, and more importantly, not so much just what we were able to accomplish in the business world, but the things that it allows us to do, and the gifts it allows us to give back to the community, and most importantly, in a country that offered freedom at a time when our homeland maybe didn't at that time. So I know a lot of people came here for a lot of different reasons, but we're here. And I spoke with Zori at great length and Mr. Babahani about how do we keep this culture alive, how do we promote it? And I've been thinking about it for the last couple of weeks, and I really kind of put it just like I would a business case or a task in business. And the first thing that we always want to do in business is grow market share. So how do we grow market share here in the United States? How do we get more Iranian Americans involved in promoting the culture and the heritage of our history? Well, I think it has to begin with awareness. I think an event like this, and I kept telling them it's very interesting, I've lived here since college, so I'll count after college, for 30 years. When I finished college, 30 years ago, came back from Michigan. I've never heard of ICEC. I just coincidentally was at a conference from Montgomery County. We ran into each other. We started to have this conversation. I was confused. I thought it was IEC in Rockville. So I wanted to make sure that, look, I'm happy to help you, but I want to make sure it's all about the culture. It's all about the heritage. We really don't want to get involved in politics. And we really just want to keep the spirit of our culture and heritage alive. I do that with my own children. My children are a lot older than yours. I have one in college and one soon to go. And it's really a shame when we talk about awareness and promoting the culture and heritage of Iran. If you were to ask my son, who is 16, and all of his friends to tell you about the culture and the heritage, they would promptly go to YouTube and pull up something like things that Persian mothers say. And I know it's kind of funny, and it's amazing what two boys were able to do and get over 1 million hits on YouTube. But it's unfortunate that that's what these kids look at as being the heritage and the culture of our homeland. You would also see programs that we sort of promote, like Shahs of Sunset. And I say that, and I'm not saying it to be sarcastic, and I'm not saying it to not stay on task, but my point is this: when stuff like that, and I'm going to be very polite, when crap like that comes out on television, the last thing that we should be doing as a Persian community is promoting it. Talking about it on Facebook, laughing about it in Facebook, and commenting about it through Twitter and social media and everything, because that's really what blows things like this up. We're buying magazines because Reza's on the cover of them or whatever, and that's the kind of thing that really gives people a really poor impression. I know my father came here with absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing. So, and I'm sure many of the people here today, they didn't come here with shoes that we throw away when they're scuffed. and money to burn, like is portrayed in programs like that. What we need to do is take that emotion and that effort and promote programs that really talk about the beauty of Iranian community. And I'll give you one example. I have a very, very good friend who lives in Montgomery County. He has a sister live in Anne Arundel County, down in Annapolis. They see each other once a year because they act like it's the end of the world to go to Annapolis. It's a 1-hour drive. And they plan once a year to get together to make Christmas cookies. And I'm like, I can't believe that. Since I was a little kid, if one of my MAs was coming, 56 of us would have to go to the airport. And we'd have to go 4 hours early so that we could sit there for 2 hours after the flight lands waiting for them, because they're going to be the last ones to come out of immigration. And I know that, and it's still true today. Because when I travel with my husband, I tell him I'm going to go get the luggage, you go in your own line, and I want my own card so I can get through, because of a stigma that's attached to it. And people look at us, and we think that it's impossible, but I have 2,000 employees. A majority of them are not Iranian. So if you ask the ones that are not, they think that, and customers, we deal with over 500,000 customers a year, they sort of lump everyone in the Middle East into one stigma, one group, that's how we're identified. We're all terrorists, we're all bad or whatever. What about all the good and the beauty of it? What can we do to educate people? So I think awareness and education is the most important thing. I think we have to start with ourselves. So I think, is this the first event that we're doing here for a conference like this? So what if every single person, it's really easy for everyone to sit back and say, yeah, I'm going to do this. We're in sales. When we commit, we have to commit. What if every person who left here today committed to being here next year and making sure that there's one person that you have encouraged to be here next year? So if we're at 400 today, we should be at least 700, because we'll give 100 a hall pass for not being, or filling the objective. And give them an objective like that. That's how we grow, that we go back and inspire people to want to be a part of it. I do a Nowruz party every year. We call it Persian New Year, so that our associates know what it's about. And my father was really concerned about it when I started to do it, and that how we're going to promote it. And the way we promote it is just like Zori said, people don't understand what is so beautiful about Nowruz. I understand the science of it, but for us, it's about a time where we take all of our bad feelings and we get rid of them, and we start fresh in our relationships with people. Family, friends, community, etc. And we give this big explanation to people, and so we have more people walking and talking with a clear message of what is the beauty and the meaning of a certain event like that. The other thing they talked about this morning was about telling all the kids, the younger generation, go out, and he said, make sure you go networking and community building. And I know you talked about it also. In a teenager's mind, networking is, and I just sat in a marketing course last week where I was told that the Gen Ys, the average number of friends on Facebook is like 700. It's about 680. I mean, my daughter has like 1,100 friends. She doesn't know anybody. I don't know where she finds these people. But if you think about that, think about all of the people. That's not networking. Networking is when we get together and sit down and have lunch and we talk about our families and why it's important for us to collaborate and get together and do something good for our community and everything. That's what networking is. Sometimes we go to business events. I was at one recently. They were like, okay, whoever has the most business cards at the end of the day wins this basket. And I was like, that's really ignorant to think that that's networking. People are walking up, hi, do you have a business card? And so I gave them, I always, we're women. We move from one purse to the other. So I always have whatever business cards were in my purse from the last time I used it. Those are the cards I passed out, because I figured if someone didn't care enough to learn who I am, they wouldn't care enough to read the card. So they would have no idea when they called the next day that they're calling the lawyer's office and thinking that they're going to get a car salesman, because that's not connecting with people. Connecting with people is getting together and having nice events like this. Our school system is never going to approve funding. I've personally tried for the last 3 years to have a law passed in Maryland that every high school kid should take a course in financial literacy as a condition of graduation. Because I look at credit reports every single day, and bad things happen to good people because they're not educated. And I go to Annapolis every year, and I've lost the vote for 3 years because they don't want to fund it. And the people testifying against us is the Board of Education, because they don't want to be told what to do with their school system. So just like in business, when we have to work with obstacles, we have to find a way to backdoor education and awareness. How do we, let's start with private schools, because people who are writing big checks for tuition have a bigger ability to bully an administration of a private school, more so than we do in a public school. So if we can start a couple of programs in a couple of local private schools, and then we have data to show that these are successful, maybe we can grow. Maybe we can grow there. You know, our kids are learning Spanish. It was interesting to see the slide today, that by third generation, how far it decreases. So maybe that'll help us. It'll start to balance. Forget the statistics of how many households across America are speaking Persian. How many in Washington are? Because I'm sure that slide would be completely different if we focused on our own backyard. Once we start with one neighborhood, one school, one group of kids, we can grow. And then we can take over a county. And then we can influence the state. And then once we influence the state, we can take it even national. But most importantly, the people who are the decision makers in our community, it takes every single one of you to make sure that when you cross their paths at the grocery store, or at a PTA meeting, or at a conference, or whatever, that we continually educate them on all of the positives and the good things about our culture and our heritage. A majority of which, 99.99%, just like any culture, is beautiful. Unfortunately, and that's what forensic is created off of, is negative and bad and things like that. So I would encourage everybody to spend the next year between now and our next conference to go out and do what you can do to create awareness and properly educate people on why we're important, why we matter, and what the community gets out of it. What's in it for them? If we sell them on the idea of what's in it for them, they'll pay more attention to us. So I hope I completed my assignment for you, Ms. Dore. It didn't take too much time.
That's my question. I can read it to you.
Okay.
Sorry. I'd like to highlight the importance of existing groups, such as Shabajome, which I was a member of and executive chairperson for, who help young professionals network. Why do some Iranians choose to bash already existing organizations, such as the ICEC as well, rather than help them improve by integrating themselves with those organizations?
Are you asking me?
I know you guys would like to take
Well, I'll tell. My answer to that would be, I think that a lot of Iranians bash things because they don't understand them. Number one, and number two, they're afraid of it. They're afraid that it's going to create a problem for them, and that it's a political thing. They don't understand it. And I think that, if anything, I think the Iranian community does a very, very poor job of sticking together and collaborating in positive manners. We spend more time. Have you ever sat in a room with 5 Persian women? And I mean, seriously, we have to take that energy and that emotion, and I'm being forthright. So you can say what you want, I'm telling you like I see it. And take that emotion, take that energy, and all negative energy, just kick them out. Move on. We want to do something about the vision and how people view our culture and our heritage. We have to have zero tolerance for anything but positive feedback and energy about it. How do you promote that organization? You know, my daughter tried to start a Persian club at her high school. And honestly, she did it so that she could have something extra to write on her college application. But the point is the school denied it. But when she resubmitted the exact same thing and just changed the title to Students for Peace in the Middle East, they jumped right on it because they figured, oh, that's what it's all really about. You know, so it's amazing. People don't understand. That would be my answer.
And thank you. And I just want to add that This question is a really big question for our community. And one of the things that I have heard about is lack of systems. And I was given a very good example. If you take the best soccer players of the whole world and you throw them in a soccer field, and they're going to do a lousy job because there is no system of who's going to play what role and what exactly is going to happen. And unfortunately, one of the shortcomings we have is that we do not establish the financial foundations of relationships and legal foundations of relationships. And when people want to do things, it's very confusing and unclear exactly what is expected of them, exactly what's going to be the outcome and where we're going to go with this information. And that is something that we are lacking, and we need to put out very clearly on the table, and so that it allows for everyone to know what role they're playing. And so when we're talking about the beautiful parts of our culture, I think there's so many, and we're all aware of it, but there are shortcomings. And this is our role, this is our responsibility, that we take the best part of what we know and we take the best part of this culture. We cannot isolate ourselves from the beautiful things we can learn from leadership and growth and financial stability and every other aspect of this culture that can help us become better citizens of the world. So we do need to integrate all those components and be able to build structures and relationships and foundations that has everybody's role clearly defined. What exactly is our mission? What exactly are we trying to accomplish? Who's going to be responsible for what? And put some of that thought of and unclear expectations away so that we can more clearly work towards common goals. And the other thing I want to emphasize is that personally, just because something is Iranian, it doesn't make me excited about it. It has to be a good thing about Iranian. So there are bad things out there that I don't enjoy, or I get embarrassed actually when I watch and I don't want to promote them. So it's not just that the automatic word is going to be enough for us to jump after it. So even, like for the Jom Shab, I would want to know what exactly is going on. And I am part of a poetry group, and I love that. But it's something that everybody that wants to know about has to be aware of exactly what the mission is and what we're trying to accomplish. And then for common goals, we can work together. Of course, we can work together if we know what exactly we're after. So that's our job. That is our responsibility.
Thank you. We have one more question, or maybe two. What strategies for advocacy and promotion of Iranian culture and heritage can you suggest for those communities that don't have that many resources?
If you have people, you have resources. Resources is never, people think of resources as limited to money. And it's really the people. If you take, let's just say, like Ike Leggett is coming here tonight.
Yes, he is.
And I think that's huge. And I don't think people really understand how important that is. That's a way to educate someone like that who has a whole lot of power. And he may not do something tonight or tomorrow, but a year from now when a subject comes up, he's going to remember that was that nice group of people, University of Maryland, Gala. This is the economic impact, because that's all they understand. It's all about votes and economic impact. So I always begin every sentence with someone like that. I employ 2,000 people, my payroll's 100 million, and this is how much I pay in taxes in your county. This is how, this is how my property tax and my unemployment, this is how many people have health care because of me, this is how many people have retirement benefits because of me. Forget money. I think money is, we're also worried about how are we going to raise money to do this. If I were you, I'd go study, there's an organization called NIAF. It's the National Italian American Foundation. My mother's from Italy, so I'm allowed to go to these meetings. And these people have it such to a science that when you go to a gala, there's only 2 hotels that can accommodate them in DC. And there's no less than 70 to 100 members of the United States House and Senate that attend a dinner like that, because they have sold them on the idea of how valuable we are as people here in the United States.
Thank you so much. I guess that's all the questions that we have. And thank you so much for our speakers.
Thank you.
Annie, so as already, on behalf of ICEC, I would like to
Oh, thank you.